Hi, my name is Grace, and I'm 26 years old. I work as an interior designer in Seattle, a city filled with texture, history, and color, much like my own life. But what I'm about to tell you isn't about my career or a design project. It's about something much more personal, much more painful. It's about family, and how the people you expect to love you the most can sometimes be the very ones who break you. I was born and raised in a quiet suburb just outside Seattle. My parents, Brenda and Frank, gave my older sister Lauren and me what you'd call a stable middle-class upbringing. We lived in a modest home with beige siding and a flower bed my mom proudly tended. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect family. But the truth? We were never as balanced as we looked. Lauren was older by a year and a half, and from the very beginning we were like day and night. She was loud, charming, spontaneous, always the center of attention. I, on the other hand, was reserved, focused, and quiet. I loved books and drawings. She loved shopping and social circles. Our parents, especially Mom, often brushed off her selfish behavior as just her being a little emotional. "Not everyone can be as independent as you, Grace," Mom used to say, whenever I complained that Lauren got away with things I'd never dream of doing. I remember when we were kids, I'd spend my allowance on art supplies or save up for books, while Lauren would blow hers in a weekend and then guilt Mom into giving her more. The favoritism was subtle at first, an extra gift here, an excuse there, but as we grew older, it became undeniable. By the time I was in high school, I was working a part-time job at a local furniture store trying to build experience in design. Meanwhile, Lauren was skipping classes and still getting praised for doing her best. Every little accomplishment of hers was celebrated. When I graduated high school with honors and a college scholarship, my parents congratulated me with a cake at home. But when Lauren barely passed her final exams a year later, they sent her to Hawaii to unwind. I wish I could say I didn't care, that I was just focused on my own goals. But the truth is, I did care. I cared a lot. I just never showed it. I worked harder, tried to make myself invisible, and told myself that if I just succeeded enough, maybe they'd see me too. Lauren, meanwhile, kept drifting, trying college, dropping out, getting retail jobs, quitting them. And through it all, Mom and Dad kept supporting her financially and emotionally, as if being the sensitive one was a permanent license to depend on others. I kept my head down, earned my degree in interior design, and built my own career from scratch. I lived simply, no wild nights, no luxury brands, just slow, intentional growth. And yet, despite it all, I never truly confronted the imbalance between me and Lauren. Not until she asked me for $250,000, my entire life savings, and then slapped me across the face in front of 500 wedding guests when I said no. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where the real cracks began. After graduating with my degree in interior design, I threw myself into the real world with quiet determination. I wasn't flashy or dramatic. I didn't post my milestones online or throw parties when I landed my first big client. Instead, I focused on building something solid, something that would last. Seattle's competitive design market didn't intimidate me. I knew that if I worked hard, built a network, and kept my clients happy, I'd make it. I started out assisting a well-known local designer, running around job sites, organizing swatches, taking measurements, and absorbing everything like a sponge. Within 3 years, I had enough experience and courage to go independent. My first solo project was a downtown condo for a tech entrepreneur. It wasn't perfect, but the client was thrilled, and word of mouth began spreading. I didn't charge outrageous rates, but I delivered top-tier work and never missed a deadline. Slowly, steadily, my client list grew. I lived frugally, one-bedroom apartment, second-hand car, packed lunches. I didn't spend on anything unnecessary. Not because I didn't want to enjoy life, but because I had a goal. By age 26, I had saved $250,000. That money wasn't for show. It was my emergency fund, my backup if clients dried up, and maybe, just maybe, my dream of owning my own design studio one day. Every single dollar represented long hours, skipped vacations, and choosing discipline over impulse. And then there was Lauren. While I was building a foundation, Lauren was still chasing shortcuts. She had enrolled in and dropped out of 2 different community colleges. She bounced between part-time jobs at clothing stores and coffee shops, always quitting because the managers were toxic or too demanding. She moved back in with our parents more than once. And yet, Mom and Dad kept bailing her out. Phone bills, car repairs, deposits for apartments she never stayed in. Even after all this, they continued to describe her as just struggling to find her path. Sometimes I wondered what my life would have been like if I had even a fraction of the support she got. But I didn't let myself dwell on it. I had learned to rely on myself, and frankly, that gave me peace. The tension between us was never explosive. It was quiet, passive-aggressive. She'd make snide comments at family dinners like, "Must be nice to have everything figured out," or "Some of us can't be perfect like you." I'd nod politely and bite my tongue. Still, I helped her in small ways. I lent her my car more times than I can count. I helped her apply for jobs. I even designed her bedroom when she finally got a new apartment, only for her to abandon the lease a month later. Then last fall, Lauren met Derek at a charity event, ironically one I invited her to because I had a last-minute conflict. He was charming, polished, and came from one of those old Seattle families that everyone seemed to admire. Within 6 months, they were engaged. "I'm finally settling down," she said during one of our rare coffee chats, twirling a diamond ring the size of my thumb. "Derek gets me in a way no one else ever has." I nodded, half hoping this meant stability was finally coming her way. But I had no idea that Derek's arrival would only make the entitlement worse. And that together, they'd come after the one thing I had worked my whole adult life to build: my savings. At first, I tried to be happy for her. Truly. Lauren was finally getting married, and I thought, maybe foolishly, that this new chapter might settle her. Maybe she'd finally learn responsibility. Maybe Derek would be the one to help her stand on her own 2 feet. Their engagement party was extravagant. White orchids, champagne fountains, even a string quartet. Something out of a bridal magazine. I kept my opinions to myself, though I couldn't ignore the subtle tension that buzzed beneath the surface. Derek smiled and played the role of a well-groomed gentleman, but when no one was looking, I noticed his eyes scanning people like he was sizing them up. A few weeks later, Lauren invited me to lunch, something rare for us. I figured she wanted to discuss maid of honor duties. I was right, but not in the way I expected. We sat on a patio in downtown Seattle. I ordered a salad. She ordered a cocktail. Then, halfway through a casual story about her wedding dress, she slid her phone across the table. On it was a spreadsheet, a detailed wedding budget. I glanced at it confused. Then she said it. "So, Derek and I were talking, and we'd like you to help us out with the finances." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "We're just a little short on our final numbers, and you've done so well for yourself. I mean, you've saved all that money. You don't even own a house yet. It's just sitting there." I stared at her. "How much are we talking about?" I asked cautiously. She smiled like it was no big deal. $250,000. The fork nearly slipped from my hand. "You want $250,000 from me? That's my entire life savings, Lauren." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. It's not like we're asking for a loan. We're family. Think of it as an investment in our future. You're not even married. What are you saving it for?" "I'm saving it for me," I said quietly but firmly. "Wow." Her voice turned cold. "After everything I've done for you?" I wanted to laugh. What had she done for me, exactly? She stood, tossed her napkin on the plate, and grabbed her purse. "You know what? I thought you'd finally grow up and be supportive. But no, you're just as selfish as ever." She stormed off, leaving me speechless and humiliated at a table surrounded by strangers. That evening, my phone started lighting up. First, it was Mom. "Lauren told us you refused to help." "Grace, it's just money. She's your sister." Then Dad chimed in. "We raised you better than this. Family supports family." It didn't stop there. Over the next week, I received subtle jabs and guilt-laden comments from relatives. I was being painted as the ungrateful one, the bitter sister with a full bank account and no heart. But none of them knew what I knew, or what I was about to find out. That Lauren wasn't just entitled. She and Derek were desperate. And I was the only one standing between them and a disaster they wanted to call a wedding. The week that followed was like walking through a storm with no umbrella. Everywhere I turned, someone had an opinion about my lack of support. Some were subtle. "You must be so successful now, Grace. Maybe you just forgot what it's like to need help." Others were outright cruel. "It's sad how money can change people." I stopped answering calls from extended family. My inbox became a minefield of guilt trips. The only people I still confided in were Jenna, my best friend since college, and Daniel, a fellow interior designer I had worked with on several commercial projects. Jenna, who had seen Lauren in action for years, didn't hold back. "She doesn't want help. She wants control," Jenna said during one of our late-night calls. "And your parents enable her like it's a sport." I let out a bitter laugh. "And now I'm a villain, because I said no." "You're not the villain," she snapped. "But if Derek is in on this too, you might want to look into why they need that money so badly." That sentence stayed with me. Daniel echoed similar concerns over lunch later that week. "If Derek's from an old money family like they say, why would they need your savings at all?" Exactly. Why indeed? That night, I sat at my laptop and opened a private browser. My heart raced like I was doing something wrong, but deep down I knew I wasn't being paranoid. I was finally trusting my instincts. I didn't have access to Derek's bank records, of course. But I had contacts, people in real estate, finance, even a lawyer I'd worked with on a commercial project last year. Quietly, carefully, I began asking questions. And within a few days, I had more than I bargained for. Derek wasn't who he said he was. Yes, his family had wealth. But Derek? He was under quiet investigation for financial misconduct at his former employer. Several clients had filed complaints about missing funds. There were whispers of gambling debts, big ones, and an entire history of shady investments gone wrong. Suddenly, the $250,000 request made terrifying sense. This wasn't just about a lavish wedding or starting fresh. Derek needed to plug holes before his world collapsed. And Lauren? Whether she knew or not, she was willing to drag me down with him. With this knowledge, my guilt started to turn into something else: resolve. They weren't just crossing boundaries. They were manipulating me, risking my financial future, and then trying to ruin my reputation when I didn't play along. I printed everything I could find. I documented Lauren's text messages, Derek's emails, and every single call from my parents where they tried to wear me down. Still, part of me hoped they'd stop. That maybe they'd realize how far they'd gone. But then Lauren sent me a message that changed everything. "If you don't change your mind before the wedding, I'll make sure everyone knows how cold-hearted you really are. Don't think I won't do it publicly." I stared at my phone. There it was, the final line crossed. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was war. The morning of the wedding was unnervingly calm. Seattle offered one of its rare, perfect summer days. The sky was a brilliant blue, the breeze light, and Mount Rainier loomed peacefully in the distance. But inside me, a storm was brewing. I arrived at the hotel where the bridal party was getting ready, exactly on time. Lauren barely looked up. "You're late," she said flatly, even though I wasn't. 5 other bridesmaids stood around in matching robes, sipping champagne. The makeup artist gave me a sympathetic smile, probably sensing the chill in the room. I pushed a smile onto my face. "Good morning to you too." For the next 4 hours, I did everything expected of a maid of honor. I fetched water, fluffed veils, adjusted jewelry, and smiled in every photo. But inside, I was unraveling. I had decided, if she crossed the line today, I would not stay silent. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll admit. Lauren walked down the aisle like she was floating. Derek looked polished and composed. If you didn't know what I knew, you might believe it was the perfect union. During their vows, I looked out at the audience. 500 guests filled the garden chairs, including city officials, local business owners, and old money families. And sitting near the front, watching everything carefully, was Judge Stephen Blake, a family court judge who'd been invited through my parents' charity connections. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception, a dazzling ballroom lit by crystal chandeliers and filled with $200 plate meals. Lauren had spared no expense. I was seated at the head table, right next to Lauren and Derek. I stayed silent, eating my salmon and sipping wine, hoping we might get through the night without a meltdown. And then she stood. She tapped the microphone gently. The music faded. "I want to thank everyone for joining us today," Lauren began sweetly. "Derek and I feel so blessed to be surrounded by such love and support." I kept my eyes on my plate. "We're especially excited," she continued, "to share that after our honeymoon in Bali, we'll be starting our married life with the help of my incredible sister Grace, who has generously gifted us $250,000 to begin our journey." Applause erupted. People turned to look at me, smiling, expecting confirmation. I felt heat flood my face. My hands trembled. I stood slowly. Lauren extended the microphone toward me with a forced smile. I took it. "I'm so happy for Lauren and Derek," I began. "And I truly wish them all the best. But I need to clarify something important." The room fell silent. "I have not given them $250,000. That was never agreed upon. I love my sister, but I will not allow this lie to stand, no matter how public the setting." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Derek looked stunned. My mother covered her face. My father stared at the floor. Lauren's expression turned to stone. And then, without warning, she slapped me. Hard. Across the face. In front of all 500 guests. A collective gasp filled the ballroom. I blinked through the sting, refusing to move. "How dare you humiliate me on my wedding day?" she hissed. I didn't respond. I simply set the microphone down, picked up my clutch and walked out, past Derek, past the gasping guests, and right past Judge Blake, who watched the entire scene unfold with unreadable eyes. Outside, I called an Uber. As I stood there in the summer air, cheek burning, heart pounding, I realized something. That slap wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. My cheek still stung from Lauren's slap, but it wasn't the physical pain that kept me awake. It was the humiliation, the betrayal, the realization that my sister didn't just lie in front of 500 people, she punished me for telling the truth. By morning, my phone was flooded with texts, some supportive, most not. "Mom. You had to do it at the reception? Couldn't you have waited?" "Dad. Lauren says you set her up to embarrass her. We need to talk." Not a single message said, "Are you okay?" I turned off my phone and stayed in bed. It was the first time in my adult life that I called in sick to work. I simply couldn't face anyone, not clients, not coworkers, not even Jenna. But by evening, she showed up anyway. She brought takeout, ice cream, and a hug that I didn't realize I needed until she gave it. "Grace," she said gently, "what Lauren did wasn't just toxic, it was assault. In front of hundreds of witnesses." I nodded slowly. "It's family drama. That's all it'll ever be." "No. It's not just drama. She hit you. In public. And she's still spreading lies. Do you want this to happen again?" I didn't. Not ever again. But what pushed me over the edge came 2 days later. My building's security manager called. "Grace, we had a couple here claiming to be family. They said they had permission to move into your unit. They were trying to deliver boxes." We stopped them, of course. "Who were they?" I asked, though I already knew. They gave the names Lauren and Derek. They got aggressive when we denied entry. It's all on camera. My heart dropped. Not only had she lied, slapped me, and shamed me in public, she had tried to move into my home. Without consent. Without warning. That night, I contacted Victoria Lane, a local family attorney Jenna recommended. I brought her everything, screenshots, voicemails, security footage, and the email Lauren sent me a week before the wedding. "Change your mind, or I will destroy your image in front of everyone." Victoria took one look at the evidence and said, "You absolutely have grounds for a protective order." I hesitated. "She's my sister. She assaulted you, tried to unlawfully enter your residence, and made repeated threats, verbally and digitally. Family or not, The law applies the same. I felt a shift inside me, like something that had been asleep was finally waking up. I was done being the quiet, agreeable one. We filed the paperwork within 48 hours. But the backlash came faster. My parents showed up at my office unannounced, creating a scene in the lobby. "How could you do this to your sister?" Mom demanded. "This will tear the family apart," Dad added. "You're making a private matter public." I pulled them into a side conference room, closed the door, and said clearly, "She hit me in public. She lied in public. She tried to take over my home. And now you want me to pretend it didn't happen?" They stared, silent. I stared back. This time, I didn't flinch. I wasn't their passive daughter anymore. I was the woman standing up for herself, her future, and her truth. The courthouse stood like a monument to justice, cold, gray, unshakable. As I walked up its stone steps, papers in one hand and Attorney Victoria Lane at my side, I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I was tired, but ready. Inside the courtroom, I spotted Judge Stephen Blake sitting quietly near the front, not on the bench, but as a witness. His presence alone felt like a silent confirmation that what I was doing was right. On the other side of the room sat Lauren and Derek, flanked by their expensive-looking lawyer. Lauren wore soft makeup and a pale cardigan, her face slightly red as if she'd been crying. Image management. Derek sat still, sharp in a tailored suit, but his eyes darted. He was nervous. Judge Rebecca Martinez presided over the hearing. Her voice was calm but firm. "We're here for petition number 27450, Matthews v. Blackwell, concerning a protective order." Victoria stood and began to lay out our case, organized, factual, and powerful. The slap at the wedding witnessed by 500 people, including Judge Blake. The unauthorized attempt to enter my apartment building. The threatening messages sent before and after the wedding. The emotional manipulation and public defamation. We submitted video footage from the building's security system, along with screenshots of Lauren's texts and Derek's email suggesting I fix this before we have to damage your reputation. Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow at that. So, the response to being told no was to threaten the petitioner's career? Victoria nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Lauren's lawyer stood next. Smooth, composed. "Your Honor, this is a family matter that has unfortunately spiraled out of control. My client, Lauren Blackwell, was under immense stress on her wedding day. The slap was emotional, not malicious." He gestured to me. "Ms. Matthews chose to correct her sister publicly, in front of 500 guests. That created humiliation, which led to the reaction. As for the apartment incident, there was a misunderstanding about whether they were invited to move in or not. It was all a miscommunication." Judge Martinez turned to me. "Ms. Matthews, were they ever given permission to move into your home?" I stood. "Absolutely not. Not in writing, not verbally. I had already said no, multiple times." Victoria submitted printouts of my text exchanges, confirming that refusal. Then came the final blow. Victoria turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we've also received documentation from the Washington State Department of Financial Institutions confirming that Mr. Blackwell, Derek, is currently under investigation for misappropriation of client funds and possible gambling-related debts." Derek's face went pale. His lawyer stood quickly. "Objection, Your Honor. That has no bearing on this hearing." Judge Martinez looked at him sharply. "On the contrary, it establishes motive for the aggressive pursuit of Ms. Matthews' assets." She took a breath, then continued. "Given the evidence presented, the physical assault, the attempted unlawful access to private property, and the communications threatening professional harm, I find in favor of the petitioner." She paused. "The court grants the protective order. Ms. Blackwell and Mr. Blackwell are to remain at least 100 feet from Ms. Matthews, her residence, and her workplace for a period of 1 year. All contact must go through legal counsel." Lauren gasped. But the judge wasn't done. "Furthermore, I am referring the building incident to the prosecutor's office for possible trespassing charges and the email communication for potential extortion evaluation." I stood still, heart pounding, as the courtroom fell silent. For once, No one could spin the truth. Not even Lauren. 6 months after that courtroom showdown, I stood barefoot on the balcony of my apartment, a steaming mug of coffee in my hand. The Seattle skyline shimmered in the distance, and the early morning sun painted everything in gold. For the first time in years, I felt still, safe, whole. The protective order had been extended after its initial review, though by then, I didn't really need it anymore. Lauren and Derek had vanished from my day-to-day life. Not by magic, but because their carefully constructed house of lies had collapsed. The investigation into Derek's finances progressed quickly. It turned out he had misused over $300,000 in client funds to cover gambling debts and luxury expenses. He eventually accepted a plea deal, probation, full restitution, and a permanent ban from the financial industry. The once polished fiancé now lived with his parents in Bellevue, his reputation in ruins. Lauren tried to hold things together, but within 3 months of their wedding, their marriage fell apart. She moved back in with our parents, and from what I heard through extended family, she still hadn't found steady work. Her once grand wedding had become a symbol of scandal and embarrassment. As for Mom and Dad, our relationship didn't heal overnight. They called a few times after the court hearing, hesitant and awkward. I answered, but I didn't go back to pretending. I made boundaries clear. I would no longer be the daughter who swallowed her feelings to keep the peace. Over time, the calls became more honest. Mom, who had once insisted I was tearing the family apart, quietly admitted during one phone conversation, "Maybe we were too focused on keeping Lauren afloat and didn't see what it was doing to you." That one sentence meant more than she realized. I had also started therapy, something Daniel gently encouraged. He didn't push, didn't try to fix me. He just stood beside me, steady and patient. In those months after the trial, he and I grew closer. Our friendship deepened into something softer, warmer, more meaningful. He didn't want my money. He didn't want my success. He just wanted me. Last month, he moved in, not out of need, but because we both chose it. Even Judge Stephen Blake reached out again. He and his wife invited me to dinner at their home. Over dessert, he said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes it takes one brave voice to stop generations of enabling. You didn't just protect your money, Grace. You broke a cycle." And he was right. I wasn't just protecting a bank account. I was protecting my self-worth, my ability to say no, my right to live a life that didn't revolve around fixing my sister's messes. Then last week, I received an unexpected email. It was from Lauren. "I've been going to therapy. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I'm not ready to talk, but I wanted you to know I'm working on understanding my part in all of this." There was no apology, but there was something. I replied simply, "Thank you for letting me know. I'm doing the same." And that was enough for now. As the sun climbed higher, Daniel stepped out onto the balcony, kissed my cheek, and handed me a second cup of coffee. "Deep thoughts?" he asked. I smiled. "Just reflecting. Sometimes standing your ground feels like the end of something, but really, it's the beginning." "To new beginnings then," he said, raising his cup. I raised mine too, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to stand up to entitled family members, or if you've been forced to choose between peace and self-respect, you are not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might be the strength someone else needs today. And if you'd like to hear more real-life stories of courage, betrayal, and justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support means everything. Thank you for watching, and remember, boundaries aren't selfish. They're survival.